What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to FudgeMuppet. My name is Scott, and today I've got a little bit of a rant. Could step on some toes, but I have the feeling the majority of people will agree. So what is the source of this rant? Why did I decide that I need to get this off my chest? Well, recently we've been making some huge videos. The first era explained and the second era explained, both of which are over 40 minutes of epic Elder Scrolls history. And I truly mean that. Elder Scrolls history is usually awesome. However, we come to the mid-second era and the events of the Elder Scrolls Online. Now, I just have to preface this with, while ESO and MMOs in general aren't really my thing, I do appreciate the amount it has added to the lore, and also it can be credited with spreading the love of Elder Scrolls to a different demographic. Elder Scrolls Online cops a lot of flack, and sometimes I think undeservedly so. ESO adds some subpar lore, plenty of which contradicts previous lore, but to be honest with you, if you actually have an in-depth look, it actually added lots of the lore that you actually love. The majority of the backstory for Elder Scrolls Online is pretty cool. The rise of King Emeric, architect of the Daggerfall Covenant, the dynasty of Reachman-descended emperors called the Longhouse Emperors, pretenders to the throne. We get plenty more exploration of the Daedric princes, and we see Colovian feudalism at its finest with anvil and kvatch fighting, but stuff like that. But we got a big but here, and the main reason for this rant, the worst part of the lore, that the Elder Scrolls Online added the Ebonheart Pact. The Ebonheart Pact, for those who aren't familiar with it, is an alliance between the races of Nord, Dunmer, and Argonians, a group of races who are basically fierce enemies for all of time. Nords invade and raid Morrowind with a hatred for elvenkind, a hatred that is reaffirmed by their very mythology and legends of Nordic heroes. The Dunmer in return hate the Nords, being the xenophobic bunch they are. They hate basically anyone who isn't them, and they've got these gods to protect them. But more importantly, the Dunmer have enslaved Argonians for thousands of years, relentlessly. House Dress and its massive salt rice plantations and its wealth and economy almost entirely depend on a huge slave force, mainly of Argonians. It is rampant. So what really happened is the creators of the Elder Scrolls Online wanted three factions for the Alliance War. The Aldmeri Dominion, which was easy and makes enough sense, and they want to protect Tamriel from the foolishness of the younger races. There's the Daggerfall Covenant, which has an incredibly cool backstory and build-up, an alliance mainly due to King Emeric, based on many negotiations and compromises navigated with shrewd diplomacy. The Covenant wants to restore the greatness of the old Riemann Empire, and then we have the Ebonheart Pact. Upon my research for the Second Era Explained video, I had to really dive deep into all of these factions, and by the 9, I was surprised when I realized how coincidental and utterly unbelievable the backstory for the Ebonheart Pact is. Like, it's legitimately nuts. I thought they would have tried to rationalize it with a necessary sort of near-forced agreement, but it just happens to be almost by chance and completely willingly, with some of the most aggressively opposed characters as well. Let me take you through it. In the year 572 of the Second Era, the Akaviri invade for a second time in history. This time, rather than an Akaviri force of men and Saisi, it was a force of Kamal, the ice demons of Akavir. Adar Sum Dur Kamal was their leader, and upon later interrogations of Akaviri prisoners, it would be discovered that he was looking for something that could be roughly translated to the Ordained Receptacle. Now, this can be used to explain why the army does make some of the more erratic decisions that it does, but anyways, here is what happens. The Akavir arrive by sea in Skyrim, right near Windhelm, which they would then siege, successfully killing the royal family, Queen Mabyan Flamehair, and her eldest daughter, Nirnhilda. At this time, Joruun, Queen Mabyan's son and twin of Fildgor, is away at Riften and only returns just in time to see Windhelm fall. In response, he seeks the help of the Greybeards, climbing the 7,000 steps. Once he reaches the top, the Greybeards uncharacteristically intervene and teach him a Thum, a shout that can summon an ancient Nordic hero. Now, first problem is the Greybeards teaching a random the Thum for the sake of intervening in wars, something they just don't do. They don't do it when Skyrim is falling apart during the Civil War, and they offer no help during the Great War when the Thalmor staged a full-on invasion of the mainland. They are pretty monk mode, but whatever fine they teach Joruun, heir to the throne, a shout. This shout is used to summon Ysmir Wulfharth. Now, for those of you who don't know, Ysmir Wulfharth is an ancient Nordic hero famous for many legends, defeating the Eastern Orcs, reversing a curse laid by the ghost of Alduin, driving the Durrani out of Skyrim, and he even reformed the religion of Skyrim at the time, reinstating the ancient Nordic pantheon, casting out the Elysian Order, and burning its temples. To put it lightly, Ysmir Wulfharth was the epitome of a hardcore Nord. Now, to explain why he is such a hatred of the Dunmer, listen to the songs from the 5 Songs of King Wulfharth book. Bear in mind that the event that is talked about, the Battle of Red Mountain, is said to have been a dragon break, therefore has many contradictory events all happening at once. Anyways, I will link our video on dragon breaks in the description to explain that in greater detail. So the 4th Song of King Wulfharth tells of his rebirth after dying in an earlier legend. The dwarves and devils, aka the Dwemer and the Kaimer, of the Eastern Kingdoms had started to fight again, and the Nords hoped they might reclaim their ancient holdings there because of it. They planned an attack, but then gave up, knowing that they had no strong king to lead them. Then in walked the Devil of Dagoth, who swore he came in peace. Moreover, he told the Nords a wondrous thing. He knew where the Heart of Shor was, aka the Heart of Lorkhan. Long ago, the chief of the gods had been killed by elven giants, and they ripped out Shor's heart and used it as a standard to strike fear into the Nords. This worked until Ysgramor shouted some sense, and the Nords fought back again. Knowing that they were going to lose eventually, the elven giants hid the heart of Shor so the Nords might never have their god back. But there was the Devil of Dagoth with good news. The dwarves and devils of the Eastern Kingdom had his heart, and there was a reason for their recent unrest. The Nords asked the Devil of Dagoth why he might betray his countrymen so, and he said that the devils have betrayed each other since the beginning of time, and this was so, and so the Nords believed him. The tongue sung Shor's ghost into the world again. Shor gathered an army as he did of old, and then he sucked in the long-strewn ashes of King Wulfharth and remade him, for he needed a good general. But the Devil of Dagoth petitioned to be that general too, and he pointed out his role as the blessed harbinger of this holy war. So Shor had 2 generals, the Ash King and the Devil of Dagoth, and he marched on the Eastern Kingdoms with all the sons of Skyrim. The 5th Song of King Wulfharth is sad. The survivors of the disaster came back under a red sky. The year is called Sun's Death. The Devil of Dagoth had tricked the Nords, for the Heart of Shor was not in the Eastern Kingdoms and had never been there at all. As soon as Shor's army had got to Red Mountain, all the devils and dwarves fell upon them. Their sorcerers lifted the mountain and threw it onto Shor, trapping him underneath Red Mountain until the end of time. They slaughtered the sons of Skyrim, but not before King Wulfharth killed King Dumak and the dwarf orc and doomed his people. Then Vek, the devil, aka Vivek, the god of the tribunal, blasted the Ash King into hell, and it was over. Kine later lifted the ashes of Ysmir into the sky, saving him from hell and showing her sons the color of blood when it was brought by betrayal. And the Nords will never trust another devil again, aka they would never trust the elves again. Now, this is somewhat legendary and a bit of a mythological piece, but still. So back to the Ebonheart Pact story. King Joruun uses the thumb that summons Ysmir Wulfharth so they can rally the Nords and fight off the Akaviri, avenging their families' deaths. However, the Akaviri army bypasses Riften and marches straight into Morrowind, heading for Mournhold. The Nordic army follows in pursuit. The Akaviri army, while heading for Mournhold, were opposed by Dark Elf forces, who staged a fighting retreat through the Ashlands under the command of Almalexia and her leading general, Tanvel of House Indoral. The Akavir pursued the Dunmeri army into a region called Stonefalls, where the elves had stopped and prepared defences. Adar Sum and his army came to a stop, and suddenly the Nordic army led by Joruun appeared at their rear, an event that seemed impossible to be merely coincidence. It is thought that the age-old enemies of Dunmer and Nord coordinated the attack to deal with the common threat, despite the fact they would never trust a devil again. So if we just hold our horses here for a second, I am supposed to believe that the Nords, with Ysmir Wulfharth, who was literally betrayed firsthand by the quote devils, would once again trust or let Joruun trust the Dunmer again. Even if Joruun was driven to trust them by grief at the loss of his family, there is no way in hell that Izmir would have helped. Joruun would have looked like a self-important ass to the Nords, prioritizing his grief, making an alliance with sworn enemies, easily losing the Nords' loyalty and compromising his future as king. I'd also doubt that logically Joruun would make an agreement with Almalexia, with what is essentially Nordic Jesus at your side. It'd be like a Christian going with Jesus to the devil and making a deal with the devil right there and then. I'd be able to buy this story more if Izmir Wulfharth wasn't involved, but it just sounds so dumb. Let's just put that aside for a second, pretend that that makes sense, and we'll move onwards with the story. The Akaviri are not so easily defeated and were pressed against the inner sea, defending themselves adequately until their ships could give them an escort. The Dunmer and Nord armies could not break their lines. Now, ladies and gentlemen, put on your helmets because this is about to get rough. Suddenly, by a complete miracle, a small army of elite Argonian shellbacks show up, to the amazement of the Dunmer, and help them kill the Akaviri. Why did the Argonians do this? Well, listen up to this lore explanation. So Hitamine, a female Argonian, was born as a slave under the Fist of Dunmer House dress. She and some fellow slaves escaped, but are recaptured by Archines, Argonian governors that often participate in the slave trade. Anyways, Hita is going to be resold into slavery. She also receives a dream/vision from the Hist about the Akaviri invasion. She's going to be whipped by Glathis, a Dunmer councilman, as she was captured, but she managed to grab the whip and kill him. She then challenges the Archon for her position by right of combat. Like, I don't even know if that's a thing in Black Marsh. I don't think the right of combat is some universal thing, but whatevs. So she wins, and then she gains control of the Archon's troops and marches them to help the Dunmer and Nord army kill the Akavir. What an absolute meme. Legit, an Argonian slave has Mahist vision, and then she helps her oppressor with some unrelated invasion shit. Like, why wouldn't she just kill the councilman, escape further into Black Marsh, and be safe? Why would the Hist tell her to go help the Dunmer, the people that have been enslaving the Argonians forever? The Akaviri wouldn't be able to penetrate Black Marsh. No one can. The center is uninhabitable by anyone but Argonians. That's why for all of history, they just don't care about shit and chill out in their swamps. It's such a contrived explanation. So we have an army of mortal enemies teaming up. They kill the Akaviri. Now what? Well, apparently they need to make the Ebonheart Pact so they can preserve their independence. What the hell? Are you kidding me? First off, Argonians, like I said, can chill out in Blackmarsh and they would be fine. I don't even think the Aldmeri Dominion or Daggerfall Covenant or the Imperials care too much about some giant swamp. Morrowind is also 100% fine. They have 3 living gods in the form of the Tribunal to protect them, which are at full power, by the way, because Dagoth doesn't show up and cut them off from the power of the heart for about another 300 years. In the old explanation, it used to be that Vivek, being an all-powerful god, taught the Dunmer how to breathe underwater for a day, and he flooded all of Morrowind, drowning the Akaviri invaders. But now it's some contrived, nonsensical alliance between bitter enemies. The Riemann Empire tried to conquer Morrowind for 80 years during the Fourscore War, and they couldn't do it. I don't think the Dunmer need to join some pact for preserving their independence. They can do it by themselves. Then we have the Nords, who hate the Dunmer, with a history of war and betrayal with them. The Nords would be far more likely to join up with the Daggerfall Covenant with the hopes of restoring the Riemann Empire, and even more likely to just fiercely fight for their own independence. The Nords are a stubborn and proud bunch. They won't sacrifice their integrity. I mean, honor and living honorably like a true Nord is the only way to get into the great halls of Sovngarde. I don't think they would all go around compromising their souls so easily. Quite simply, this is the most nonsensical alliance in the history of the Elder Scrolls. I mean, hell, the second the Ebonheart Pact is over, slavery returns, and all of them hate each other again. And by the way, I love these races. The reason I hate the Ebonheart Pact is because it fundamentally undermines what makes these races so cool. They basically went, screw the law, we need another alliance, and these are the leftover races. And the explanation is so poor. I highly encourage you to look at the Second Era Explained video though. It ain't all bad. There is some really cool lore that has been added by the Elder Scrolls Online, the Daggerfall Covenant in particular. I am generally quite forgiving and generally sweep a lot of the little lore hiccups under the rug, but holy moly, this one is just so fundamentally wrong. What do you guys think about all this? And I did ask the question on Twitter, getting some interesting answers, so I'll ask here again. Down in the comments, tell me the one thing that you would change or remove from the Elder Scrolls lore. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Social media links are in the description, along with links to various useful videos. My name is Scott from FudgeMuppet, and I'll be back to nerd out with you again next time.